Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one of the unique items that you probably got first out of just about every unique item in the game. Not for me, though. I got Butcher's Cleaver first. That was my first item. Mother's Embrace is one that actually comes from the campaign, and is also one that has kind of like not really had the best effect, which is kind of interesting. So, what it does, and let's go over it first, and then we'll talk about it. So Mother's Embrace is 10% all resistances, and it also has 10% Shadow Res. These are innate stats on rings. It also has 47 to 65 all stats now, which is kind of interesting, especially considering that all stats is very useful for activating those Paragon nodes on the board. And on top of that, it also gives other stats too, like, for instance, no matter what character you are, 65 all stats is going to give you armor through strength. It's going to give you resistances through intelligence. It's going to give you overpower and other interesting things through the willpower stat, and it's going to give you critical strike chance and dodge through the dexterity. So a nice little bonus there to everything, even though it might not be the highest bonus to everything. It'll still give you something. On top of this, we also get a pretty decent 10.5 to 15% increased attack speed. And as you can see there, I have a greater affix roll on this particular ring of the critical strike chance. So it's up as high as 12%, which is pretty cool. And then we get a pretty decent lucky hit bonus of 6 to 8% lucky hit. Now, the real meat and potatoes of this particular item comes with the resource cost return, which is if a core skill hits 4 or more enemies, 60% of it, resource cost, is refunded. Which is kind of interesting. Now, this has some rather neat connotations, which I think a lot of people might not necessarily think about. So, for instance, if you're using a enchantment, or maybe you have something that requires you to spend, this isn't actually reducing the cost of the skill base, it's refunding the cost after. So if you're using something like the Chain Lightning, which is Chain Lightning forms automatically after spending 83 mana, this could be interesting because instead of bringing down the cost of the ability, which you probably would want to do, because obviously if you're trying to get more Chain Lightnings, you want the cost to stay high. Well, this is going to help refund a lot of that cost because it's going to just simply allow you to cast it, and then once you cast it, it's going to refund 60% of the cost back to you. And they did enhance this by quite a bit. Now, I have used this successfully on some characters. My main issue with this is that, well, obviously, it doesn't really work very well on bosses because, well, there's not 4 or more enemies around the boss. And so the resource cost reduction kind of tanks when it comes to bosses. It seems to be a highly specific ring. If it's useful, it's very useful. And if it's not useful, it's basically trash, which is unfortunate. Now, the stats that they did give to this are a hell of a lot higher than what it had previously. However, I do find that it is difficult to compete with other very good aspects that are also being highlighted at this point, like, for instance, the Starlight aspect, which you may or may not have checked out. That one in particular is pretty ridiculous these days in terms of like what it could do to restore your resource, and I think the Starlight aspect beats Mother's Embrace, if I'm perfectly being honest. It also has a flavor text that says every tome, every scroll, every book in this temple produces the same answer, the only being willing to stand against the eternal conflict against the primevals was Lilith, Elias. Now, personally, I think Mother's Embrace can be very useful in certain builds, like, for instance, pen shot builds on the Rogue. You can also utilize this very well with something like Chain Lightning, although it's not really going to help you with the new actual Conduit Pants, which is rather unfortunate, because that is a different form of attack as well. I also don't really like that it's limited specifically to core skills. I mean, there are other abilities in the game that consume resource, although a lot of the Raft skills have been converted into core skills now, so I guess technically it also functions well with them. Not entirely sure. It could be interesting to play around with this on, say, like a Bone Spirit Necromancer. It'd be interesting to see if the 60% refund on the Bone Spirit Necromancer actually refunds, like if, for instance, if I've got like 300 maximum essence and I fire off a Bone Spirit and it hits 4 or more targets, could it potentially give me back 60% of that 300, which would be what, like, what is that, 180 maximum resource back, which is certainly not terrible. There definitely are some uses for the ring. I don't want to like imply that it's a useless ring. But what I do want to say is that it's useless to most people. And when it is useful to you, it's extremely useful. I do like the stat changes that they made to it. I do feel like the crit chance, the attack speed, the all stats, and the lucky hit make it a very powerful ring regardless. So if you do just happen to find this ring and you want to slap it on for a little while just to get the additional bonuses, it's really not terrible. Mother's Embrace does drop from specific places, and if you're looking to find out where this drops from, I would recommend heading over to Diablo 4.life. If you go to Diablo 4.life, we do have some pretty interesting tools on here. There's a lot of stuff you can do on this website, but we also have the target farming uniques. And if you go ahead and click on Mother's Embrace, you'll see that it says Echo of Arshan and Beast in the Ice can both drop you Mother's Embrace. So if you're looking to farm one, it's a good place to go. There's actually a lot of good items to drop from Beast in the Ice these days. So there's that too. I mean, it could be interesting to see like a 4 greater affix rolled like perfect Mother's Embrace. I would imagine it would be pretty beast with like a really nice attack speed, a really nice all stats, a really nice lucky hit chance and crit chance. And of course, the really interesting thing is that if you got a greater affix roll on the all stats, you're obviously going to get even more crit chance. So like for instance, if I take off this ring and we take a look at our crit chance right now, my critical strike chance is currently 57%, right? Well, putting this ring on, you would think that would go from 57 to 68, so 69%. But when I throw this on, it's going to go 69.9 because the dexterity contribution from the 47 all stats is giving me an additional 0.9% critical strike, right? So, like, if you had a greater affix version of this, you masterworked it, you would get a pretty decent bonus to your critical strike chance, your pretty decent bonus to your dodge chance. You get a pretty nice bonus to your overpowered bonus, your healing received, your resource generation, your resistances, your obviously your skill damage if you're a sorceress, and also your armor contribution too. So definitely not like a terrible ring anymore in terms of at least the stats on it, but it really comes down to the question of do you need this specific effect? Not everybody does, unfortunately. I think that's pretty much it for this. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these videos. If you enjoy my content, please be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button. It really does help out the channel and keep things pumping. And as always, keep watching.